America.com. And we welcome the CEO, United Sovereign Americans, Marley Hornick. Marley, welcome to the program again. Sorry about the bumpy start. Um, we're having what we call an election integrity week here, and we are now calling it also guarding the vote week. And we're having a guest every single morning that is working on what we call guarding the vote for 2024. And you and I talked the other day, and I asked you to come on and share with our audience, how did you get involved in analyzing voting systems and looking at everything that you look at? Just give us a little background of who you are and how you got started in this.
Sure, thank you. I am a homeschool mother in the Hudson Valley of New York, and I value freedom. We're homesteaders, so we do a lot for ourselves. We grow food and we have animals, and we do a lot. And I value that liberty tremendously, and I want to preserve it and protect it. And I also value the world. And I saw after 2020, I saw that it seemed that there was an attack almost on the world unfolding, and I wanted to help. And I am not a technical person by trade. I don't have any particular specialties, or I don't have any piece of paper on the wall, I like to say. I just really love this country, and I really love the world, and I really love my kids. And I became the executive director of New York Citizens Audit, which is a citizen group that is many, many professionals are involved. And we took the time to get a copy of the New York State Voter Roll Database, and we started to explore. We said, well, everyone's home. We either have to be part of a medical experiment to go back to work, or we're home and we're no longer essential. So we got a copy of the New York State Voter Roll Database, and basically never turned back, because it turned out that to make a state appear to be deep blue, you had to load the voter roll database with instances of potential crimes. We discovered over 5 million potential crimes right inside of the New York State Voter Roll Database regarding the registration of voters and who's allowed to vote. And it's just my opinion that they never thought anyone would look. So basically, what we did was we organized all of our findings ultimately into 4 simple arguments that I call the election validity arguments. If you are if you're talking about election integrity, you're talking about something that doesn't exist, right, Brian? Integrity means doing the right thing when no one is looking. And elections can't do that. They are not moral beings. Elections are accurate under the law, or they are invalid. And that's really the only choices that you have. So what constitutes a valid and legal election? First of all, the voter rolls have to be accurate. That's the National Voter Registration Act, purpose number 4. So this is a huge priority that the Congress signed into law in 1993. Second of all, the votes counted have to be from eligible citizen voters. And this comes from the 14th Amendment. In the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, there's a provision that says that all of your eligible citizen voters cannot have their vote denied, and they cannot have their vote abridged in any way. If their vote is abridged in any way, then the state loses apportionment in a ratio of how many citizen voters were disenfranchised. That means the state loses electoral college votes, it loses congressional representation, and it loses federal funds. Those are severe penalties according to whether or not you're allowing people who are not eligible to vote in federal elections. The third principle of election validity is very simple. It sounds so simple, it's almost deceiving. Did the number of votes counted equal the number of voters who voted? If you have 20 people in a room and you take your paper bag, you pass it around, and everybody throws their ballot in, right? You close the bag, shake it up, you open it, dump it on the floor, and there's 30 ballots. You're not ready to certify. you can't even count that election yet because there's a whole investigation that has to take place before you can even figure out which of those ballots came from the people sitting in the room. And finally, there is an accuracy requirement for voting systems under the Help America Vote Act of 2002 that says that the system can read no more than 1 out of 125,000 ballots in error. And I'll give you some numbers on that, but I want to just pause for a second and see if you have anything you want to add right now.
Yeah, I do. And I want to thank you for the opening. You and I spoke the other day, and I want to thank you for the way you opened, because homeschool mother, something's wrong. And I run into these people every single day. Every single day, I get phone calls, emails, I go to places, something's wrong. You know, they never thought anyone would look. Now, I made some notes. So I want to ask you a question before you get to the graphics, and then, whatever you want to show the audience. You said they never thought anyone would look. You guys, a team, decided to look. Now, here's my question to you. Now, I'm in Georgia, okay? I'm in Georgia, and we have a difference. It's a little different when we said something's wrong here, okay? We are supposed to be a red state, all right? And we'll leave it there. When I think of New York, sorry to maybe sound offensive, I think of California, New York, blue, blue, blue. You do have some red pockets. You do have some red members of Congress. Same with California. But why did you not just accept, knowing New York is blue, that these elections went this way? What was it that said to you and a group of friends that also questioned this in New York? That's what's interesting to me. Why didn't you just say, well, we're a blue state. Look, we figured it would happen. This is what happened. What really, I'm amazed that you guys in New York said, we're going to look at this, and I appreciate the findings, but can you elaborate on that?
Sure, I think just like everywhere, there's certainly people who have fallen for the extreme progressive ideologies, but most people who have, even people who would, let's just say, let's go back to traditional Republican and Democrat kinds of problem-solving approaches, and let's say that Republicans veer more towards, helping people to solve their own problems, right? Getting out of the way so people learn that they have the capacity and they have the ability to address things in their lives. And Democrats lean more towards uh, empathy and wanting to solve it for them, or wanting to get in there and see if they can give the person 50%, and if they'll do the other half, right? And that's kind of more a traditional view. But the current progressive policies are so extreme, and they're so clearly, blatantly destructive to human health, to the health of our young people in body, mind, and spirit. And I don't think there's a lot of people. I mean, in New York, there are so many Democrats who were voting, for example, in 2022 for Lee Zeldin. Now, I don't know the outcome of that election. Neither does the Board of Elections in New York State. They certified an outcome that they can never prove. They will never be able to prove it. And in fact, we found twice as many votes as the supposed margin of victory that appear to have been cast by people whose registration records don't meet the standard of the law. But the issue is there were many, many people who are more centric, I would say, more centrist, less progressive, radical Democrats, and they don't like those solutions. They don't want criminals let out of jail. The inner city people are so angry and so miserable right now because they're living in practically a war zone and there's no recourse. No human being wants to experience that. And who cares about politics at that point? You just want your kids to be safe.
Well, Marley, I appreciate those comments, and And I think to myself, when someone says an election that can never be proven, it I try to remind people on a daily basis, elections should not be partisan. This should not be owned by the Republican Party. It should not be owned by the Democrat Party. Elections are for the American people, and I think sometimes when we talk about elections, it looks like it's a party driven thing, and it should not be. It doesn't matter how you go vote; that's up to you. It's just that your vote is accurate. We can track it, we can count it, and we can prove the result when the night is over. Marley, you did send some graphics over. I know you got a game plan here. I want to get out of the way of that. I don't like to get in the way. So you go ahead with whatever you want to do next.
Sure. Well, it's a perfect opportunity to bring up slide one, because let's talk about when you measure validity of an election, what does that look like? So, United Sovereign Americans, we started with New York, yes, but I'm going to also show you some Illinois data, and we also have Ohio ready. We have Maryland almost ready. We have state after state lining up to get into federal court and ask the judges across America, does this look valid to you? Here's that first question. Were the voter rolls accurate as required by the National Voter Registration Act of 1993? Now, within the New York State voter roll database, which is required to be accurate, again, not to beat that point, but it's just so simple, we found 1.4 million illegal duplicate registrations. This is where you have a particular voter who, for whatever reason, has been granted more than one unique State Board of Elections identifying number. Now, the federal law and state law both say each voter gets one unique statewide identifier, and we have 1.4 million people who have more than one, and some of them, I'll give you the spoiler alert, have as many as 25. And the Board of Elections would like you to think that's just a simple processing error coming from the DMV, but this is called election fraud. The Department of Justice Public Integrity Unit describes false registration as deadwood registrations, which are, when they are present in a voter roll database, they can be used to cast illegal votes. Why else would they be in this database? That's why it has to be accurate, because everybody in the database appears to be a voter and they get a ballot. We have 1.5 million people who are purged with no purge date. This is what we call a black letter law violation. That means this violates a law that is either so well settled or it is so incredibly easy to understand that your third grader can identify when it's being broken. In New York State eligibility requirements and registration requirements, if a registrant is purged, which means they cannot get a ballot anymore under any circumstances. There's absolutely no way, no provisional ballots, no affidavits, no getting permission from a judge, you're done. If you have a purged record and it doesn't have a purge date, it violates the law, because any votes that that registration record appears to have, no one knows. There's no way, not even the Board of Elections can tell you whether those votes were cast before the purge or after the purge. If they're before, then they're legal. If they're after, they're illegal. If there's no date, then we're taking their word for it that this is not an illegal vote. Now, fascinatingly, even though when you're purged, you cannot vote, we discover if you scroll down a little bit into category number 2, were the votes counted from eligible voters as required by the U.S. Constitution? Again, the 14th Amendment, we discover that over, let's see, just on this sheet, about 3,500 people who were purged cast votes. That's 3,500 pending questions that need to be answered. Again, it's like one of those moments when you dump the ballots out on the floor and you realize some of them came from these mystery voters. You can't count those ballots and you can't certify that election because that's dilution of the vote. And in 1964, the United States Supreme Court ruled, and it is now black letter law, they said that dilution of a citizen's vote is an equal disenfranchisement to denial of the vote. So we have other stuff here. We have, for registrations, we have 1 million people registered to vote on January 1st. Now, I'm so happy because yesterday the Board of Elections issued a letter over to the New York State Sheriff's Association telling them, that those people are a bunch of kooks and don't listen to them and don't let your sheriffs talk to them. But one of the things they said in the letter was, we process all voter registration manually. Now, they have an excuse for January 1st registration dates. They say, oh, that's because when we took all the records from paper to electronic, we didn't know the registration dates for a certain number of people, so we put in this default date. So there's two problems there. First of all, they just admitted to entering false information into a database that is part of our critical national security infrastructure. So that's a big no-no. Second of all, there's 1 million of them. If I wanted to inject, let's say, 20,000 fraudulent registrations into a database, and I knew the Board of Elections was going to cover for me, and they were going to defend this category to the death, I would send all my registrations in as January 1st registrants, right? And there's no excuse because they have these still coming in the database, people registered on January 1st when no one is in the office. No one's there to manually process registrations. And here we go down below, 250,000 of those registrations cast votes in the 2022 general election in New York State. In fact, from all these categories of registration that clearly violate black letter law principles, we found 732,000 unique votes cast in the 2022 general election by registration records that violate the law. And it's easy law. Again, who am I? I'm a homeschool mom. I'm not an attorney. It's easy to read this law and it's easy to understand. If you registered to vote after you voted, that's a problem, and it needed to be investigated before that vote could be counted and that election could be certified. You see, because when they certify an election, that official is swearing and attesting, both in their official capacity and personally, that they know that everything in that election followed the law and that the results are dead accurate, that the vote absolutely accurately measures the intent of the voting public, those who are eligible to vote. And that's a lie. In New York's 2020 and 2022 general elections, that's a lie. And what we did here is we measured it. Okay, so we're no longer just ranting, right? Who's tired of ranting? It's just enough. We have to stop with the ranting and we have to start showing and demonstrating and proving effect. And this piece of work right here, and again, this is New York, this is my home turf, but we also have Illinois, we have Maryland, we have Ohio, and I'll tell you the states that are working now actively. We have Florida, North Carolina, California, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan. We have Wisconsin in the wings and Virginia still waiting to get data. And we have more states than that I'm forgetting. We have Massachusetts, right? Minuteman state. We have so many states coming along and they're making these claims. It takes about 8 weeks to go from beginning to scorecard, and that's what we bring to court. And we say, Judge, in federal court now, not state court, in federal court, that way we can write the same template, we can use the same federal laws, everybody working together can use the same laws to uphold their claims, and we can say, Judge, does this look accurate and valid to you? And actually, if you scroll down, we can look at the final two categories. Remember, we had was the number of votes counted equal to the number of voters who voted? And the answer is no. You cannot reconcile the 2022 general election in New York. And reconciliation is very important, right? If you file your taxes and you're $35,000 off, it doesn't matter if you were ignorant of that mistake. It doesn't matter if you arrogantly blew past the mistake, and it doesn't matter if you lied on purpose. Any of those things, the IRS is coming after you. That's not okay. It's not okay to put the wrong thing on your taxes. And we found 35,000 more votes counted than voters who voted. That means there were 35,000 ballots that no one has any idea how they got into the system. And now, again, let's make one last measurement. Remember that the Help America Vote Act says the voting system can record no more than 1 out of 125,000 ballots in error and still consider that election ready to certify. Doesn't mean that it's wrong, it means it has to be investigated. So for the New York State 2022 election, that means they were allowed 48 ballots in error total statewide. That's the law. So that means we had 745,000 unresolved voting errors. You could add the 35,000 unknown ballots to that if you feel like it. I mean, the numbers are insane. And they certified that as accurate and compliant with the law. And they signed Kathy Hochul in to be the New York State governor, and they signed 26 U.S. congressmen to go and change the culture of our nation. And they signed Chuck Schumer in to go and be a U.S. senator and change the culture of our nation. And they will never be able to prove that that was the will and the intent of the New York State voting populace.
All right, so let me ask you a question. You're so thorough. What you've done in New York Citizens Audit, where you started this. You're the CEO of United Sovereign Americans. You've taken this national. You're working with teams all across the country to duplicate data, much like you did in New York. On the regular people out here well, first of all, they called you kooks, correct? So
yeah, that's the nicest thing they called us.
right, exactly. So from the regular folks out here, this sounds great. This is great information. I work with people every day that are doing this kind of research. This is amazing. I'm excited about it. How do you get in court? When you say the judge, and this is what, and I am going to say Democrats for this reason, they can get their day in court. They seem to always find the judge that is favorable, that will listen to them. So how do we go any further with this data? If I'm out here and I'm just a person that says, let me give you just a question. This is a lot of work. Is this all for naught? How do you get this data before a judge? How do you get your argument before a judge? What's the game plan?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because I forgot to mention that the Help America Vote Act and the National Voter Registration Act, they fall under a particular kind of law. You see, Congress does not have the authority to pass laws that restrict election process. That's up to the time, manner, and place of our elections is determined by state legislatures. So the only way that Congress gets away with federalizing elections and passing these national election laws is by making them civil rights law. So this has nothing to do with elections. Everything you're looking at on this sheet, and that I would, if we have time, or we'll come back and show you the Illinois stuff or show you other states, everything you see has nothing to do with elections. It has to do with our fundamental grand right, the first grand right, according to those who signed on to all of the members of the First Continental Congress. The first grand right is that of the people in having a share of their own governance by their representatives chosen by themselves, and in consequence of being ruled by laws which they themselves have approved. This is about our fundamental civil right to government by consent. Remember, let's go back. In America, the founding principle is natural rights. The founding principle of our country is that each of us is a created being, a divinely created being, and therefore we answer first and foremost to our Creator. It is the role of the federal government to protect that right. That's why the federal government was created, because it's better to protect that right collectively than individually. We have a better chance of upholding it. So, how do we do that? Well, we decide to be ruled by laws. Thomas Paine said, in America, the law is king, because they knew that no human being would be able to sit on that throne and always make the right choices, never have self-interest in like infuse their approach, right? So they put the law on the throne. The law is controlled by the sovereign of the country, that's we the people, by the vote. We choose those who we will temporarily grant the tremendous honor and privilege of writing and enforcing laws for the country through an honest and accurate vote. And if that vote is corrupted in any way, we're no longer being ruled by representatives and the law goes rogue. That's why we're going into court, because this has to do with our fundamental civil right. And this is a beautiful gift, I believe, from our Creator, because this is absolutely unifying. Like you said, it has nothing to do with a political party. It has nothing to do with the outcome of any particular election. We don't care what the outcome is. We just want to know that it's true and accurate. It has nothing to do with anything other than, do you believe in government by consent? Do you believe in civil rights? And thankfully, the progressives for 110 years have done nothing but shove civil rights down our throat. So we all can agree on this, actually. Everybody in America can agree that the outcomes of elections have to be valid.
You know,
Every United States citizen has standing on this matter.
being in Georgia, we hear all the time through the media, we hear that we want to overturn an election. And I have said on this program thousands of times, I don't want to overturn any election. I just want to know the results of the election. That's all I want. Once the results are accurate, if I have to if I have to accept the person that was elected, then I say, hey, that's how it works. Let me say this in closing, because you did open the door on something. So yes, you're coming back. We're going to get you back. We got the whole audio thing straightened out, so we won't lose that minute and a half in the beginning. I do want to hear about Illinois. I do want to hear about Ohio. I do want to hear, and our audience wants to hear nationally about other projects you guys got going on. We want to hear about it. So let's check off when we're going to get back on that, and I'll get with your team on that. Here is the question I think I have in wrapping up this morning. What does all of this work that you're doing, and I know you know several on our team. I call it our team. We're together in Georgia. I know you know several of the analysts, I'll call them, on our team in Georgia, and you've worked with them and spoke with them multiple times, and they're aware of your work. Now, here's my question. How do we take the work that America, United Sovereign Americans and your team is doing, and apply it to 2024? Because you're aware of this. We have the politicians that say we can't look in the rearview mirror. We need to just get rid of that. And we need to do certain legislation and get ready for 2024. How do we take everything that you're working on and what effect could it have on 2024 or help?
Sure. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, again, we're going to follow the law. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 says if you believe your civil right regarding suffrage has been abridged or is going to be abridged, and you can provide evidence to support that claim, what you need to do is file a temporary restraining order in federal court against the administration or certification of that election. We are going to be filing in the top 4 states that are ready. We're going to be filing within weeks. We do not plan to wait and watch this country be stolen. And again, United Sovereign Americans, that's our name because that's exactly who we are. No one's getting paid. This is a 100% volunteer effort that is designed to save our country. And everyone is invited to the party. So we are not going to wait and cry on November 6, 2024 that we don't have standing. There's a couple of things that happen when you file in court well in advance of the election, which, and I'm talking literally in weeks. We may file before 2024. We may be filing just after the start of the new year in New York, Illinois, Maryland, and I can't remember. Ohio is the last one that's really ready right now. And there's a couple other states that might be ready by then as well. Point being that the law says you file an injunction basically against the administration of that election. You don't let them even begin the process of denying your suffrage. It has to be protected. That's how important this right is. And so that's what we're going to do. And one of the reasons why we want to do this in so many states, and this is why, I mean, believe me, I homeschool, I have a homestead, I'm down to 4 goats. I barely grew any vegetables this summer. I do this all the time. But that's because I realized if we won in New York, what does that do for Georgia? It does nothing. What does that do for people in Tennessee? It does nothing. What does it do for America? Nothing. So we're filing in as many states as we can possibly get together. And again, these are all volunteers. Some of them are skilled professionals. Some of them, like me, are just determined, dogged individualists who will do anything to save this country. And we fully expect to get a no in some districts. We fully expect some federal judges to look at that scorecard and say, it looks fine to me. And I hate to say that because it looks horrid, but I do believe that could happen. But it doesn't matter. You see, if 2 federal districts come out with opposing rulings, it is immediately forced to the United States Supreme Court. And this is emergency litigation. This is not litigation that they can drag out for 24 months. A TRO regarding your suffrage in an upcoming election is considered emergency litigation. This is real.
All right, so I love that. I love that snap. This is real. I love that snap. I love that. This is real. I'm going to write that down because I agree, but it's the way you delivered it. Marley, in 2020 and then 2022, but in 2020, I'm going to say there were so many things we were not ready for. We were not ready for the legal challenges. We were not ready for some of the things in our voting system, not ready on voter rolls. There's just a lot of things that I will say, we were looking around and saying, how come we were not ready? Now, fast forwarding, there are amazing patriots all across the country. You know them. You've been across the state talking to different groups. There's people across the country that are ready in so many different areas this time. So what you're saying is in this area, we have different lanes, and we need people working in all those lanes, perfecting that, getting it ready. But where you guys are concerned, you have this, and we're not going to be sitting back this time on 2024 when it comes to these certain legal challenges that you guys are doing the data. I loved hearing that. You know, I go to a lot of meetings, and I will hear people, and you're gonna be able to probably put names to this of people you know, and they say, I work 7 days a week. I have kids, yes, a family, and then I'm working another 30 hours trying to talk to, my representatives. I'm working on all of these election things, and some days, I've given all I have, and now I have the line because I wrote it down. I say, look, when you feel you can't go no further, remember Marley's down to 4 goats. I wrote that down. That just made my day. I'm down to 4. I love that because I understand where you're coming from on that. It's the sacrifice that our forefathers, our founding fathers, it's the sacrifice and the legacy we are supposed to preserve for our children. I have 5 grandchildren, and all of us are down to something. All of us that are working in this, we're sacrificing, we're giving, and I appreciated that. Do you have anything to close this morning's segment, Marley, that we didn't discuss that you want to make sure the viewers get to hear?
I just want to invite everyone to come to unite4freedom.com, unite number 4freedom.com, and sign up to volunteer or at least stay informed. We have a lot of resources that are freely given. We're an educational C4, a 501c4 nonprofit. So we do a ton of educational opportunities. I have a call every Tuesday night at 7 Eastern where we just sit and read federal election law, again, civil rights law, but we read it together so that as many people as possible in America can understand how this plays into our right and how to understand what constitutes validity in an election. So I invite people to come there, sign up to volunteer or sign up to stay informed. If you have a little extra money, send us some money. We can use it for the attorneys. Again, everyone who's doing the research is a volunteer. Everyone who's organizing, all of it is volunteering, but we are paying attorneys. Currently, they're even working pro bono, if you can believe it. They're so all in on this strategy that we have brilliant constitutional attorneys at the top echelon working on this pro bono, but we will have to pay them. So please come and see us at unite number 4freedom.com. Look forward to meeting you.
Marley, we're going to get with your team and reschedule because you laid the groundwork in New York and all the things you have going on from Ohio to Illinois and so many other states that we do want to go to the next level here and listen to the results you have and see those results. You have a wonderful day. I appreciate you very much, and I apologize again for a rough start, but this was a great segment, and our people are going to love it. Thank you, Marley.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
All right, folks, Marley Hornick, CEO of United Sovereign Americans. Share this with your friends. We are going to protect the vote. We are going to protect the vote. We're going to work on it as hard as we can. Diane, can you put the graphic up tomorrow? Tomorrow, don't forget that we will continue this protecting the vote. Tomorrow morning, Kim P. Brooks, a data analyst in Georgia, will be with us at 9 a.m. So amazing. We're going to take a break. We probably won't have time to complete the next segment, but we're going to discuss redistricting for about 5 or 6 minutes when we return. So don't leave us here.